Hey guys, in this video I wanna share 5 reasons why you should play the RPGs or first-person dungeon crawlers, but also 5 reasons why you shouldn't. I am not here to sell any idea, but to share what this subgenre does well and not so well. Without further ado, let's go one and one, beginning with the first con. They are hard games. Something that intimidates a lot of people is when a video game goes bonkers against you in every possible way. I mean, probably what you wanna do after a stressful day is put a game and relax. Have fun for a while. Not start cursing at the screen because somehow you got a terrible ambush that it's beating the heck out of you in an unfair way. Or having to farm countless hours for a tutorial weapon that is needed to complete a dumb quest. Quest that you cannot avoid because unless you complete it, the game won't let you move forward. Dumb and stressful environment traps that outrageously kill all your characters. Terrible difficulty spikes that will turn your playing session into something tedious. Puzzles that are so freaking complex, to the point that even guides did some guesswork at least in the old days. In really old school approaches, you need paper and pen, otherwise good luck finishing those games. Yeah, first-person dungeon crawlers received that kind of treatment because, let's face it, they threw the cheapest tricks in every single corner, forcing you to meticulously plan every single step. But now let's take a look at the other side of the coin with the first pro. I would also say that they are becoming way friendlier. This is going to be debatable, but when I compare the 80s to the 2010s approach on the genre, they definitely have toned down many annoying things, like permadeath, in a game that pretty much beats the heck out of you in almost every encounter, so you don't have to create new characters to then jump into the dungeon and go after your purge team to either try to save them or take your equipment. While there are traps, most of them are just annoying, but not to the point where you simply sigh in disapproval. Sure, they are still hard, but they have become much more accessible to many kinds of players, sometimes with difficulty settings or keeping the adventure moderately short, so it doesn't become stagnant, as there are many games in this genre that take well over 60-100 hours. There are also many that take like 30-20 hours. In the next con, they are misunderstood. If you listen to most people who review these games, there is a word that is way overused, which is generic. Now, I don't blame people when they use that term here, because the root of the RPGs comes from D&D, that old DRPG that has received some updates. Now this comes from a psychological fact, and is that human beings like to know names, background, and in a kind of way insert themselves in the story through the actions of the main character. In D&D it turns into a lot of fun because you play with other people, so you share laughs, serious and dumb moments through the tale, where each player imagines the character they are using. Unfortunately, in games it depends a lot from the kind of setting and writing given to them. Now add that this subgenre oftentimes lacks of main characters, where you will have random portraits. So yep, I've said it before and I'll say it again, unless your imagination runs a bit wild, this is going to be a persistent feeling in most DRPGs, where you need to create your characters. Now this feeling becomes easier to digest in games that let you create but one character, hence the self-insert feeling, reason why Monster Hunter or most From Software games are much more liked. Of course, putting into perspective a game with not so great a story, and another which can be tricky to get. In the second pro I will say, get to know the roots of RPGs. If you thought that most ideas you see in RPGs are originals, guess what? Nope. The fact is that Wizardry was the pioneer in most of what you know. And it will surprise you, because this Western RPG influenced a lot JRPGs. Perhaps the most important ones were Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. Sometimes questioned, but I agree that it also influenced Mega 10. These games subsequently influenced other games. Guess who created the basic job or class system that most games use? The classic town dungeon town routine, party formations, and we could go on and on with many examples. Wizardry also influenced games that may surprise, like Halo and Doom. Now with this I don't intend to say that you have to go over every single Wizardry, that will be a painful experience, but something that can be done in the traditional DRPG is that they are a full Wizardry that just lacks the name. In the third con, I will say, they are dated. Let's face it, how many companies do you know that actively work on these kind of games? Or within your group of friends, how many of them say that they genuinely like DRPGs? Do you think that companies like Capcom or Square Enix will go out of their way to develop one of these games? When they can throw another Resident Evil or Final Fantasy with questionable quality but bigger chances to make a lot of money? Yep, most companies don't even look at this subgenre because it doesn't represent a huge profit. And while some of them strike in the right place every once in a while, let's face it, more and more companies are combining RPG elements with other genres, because that way they can make something more appealing. This has led to this subgenre being more active within indie companies, hence there are good games with small runs, no translation to other languages, stock in beta, or in older consoles that are not ported to new systems, hence contributing to this genre being less popular. Lately, thank God for the Switch, digging some graves. This leads to the third pro, which is customization. If there is something that I have appreciated a lot in the RPGs, is that most of the times you can customize your characters in really complex ways. It is not like the classic RPG where your character have a specific role within the team, or others that sometimes throw a secondary class in between. But in these games oftentimes you can combine classes like mad. Of course there are certain limitations, but at the end of the day, this adds a level of complexity that is really enjoyable if you like to create particular paths for each character. I won't deny that this can be time consuming, but put it into a perspective. It is like Monster Hunter games where you can make your specific build to play however you like. In the fourth con, I would place visually unpleasant. The fact is that most DRPGs have an okay look, but because most companies that produce these games are not AAA companies. Take a look at Idea Factory, Atlus, Experiencing, Acquire. On this side of the lake these games aren't that popular, but Japan celebrates a lot DRPGs. Fortunately or unfortunately, most of the times with a classic wizardry approach, which is not as appealing as when you have 3D characters beating the heck out of an enemy. Let's just put them side by side, and yeah, it isn't that appealing. It doesn't matter if we throw the Japanese or Western approach. A 3D action game has more assets to appeal, even if they don't have the best of budgets, compared with a classy 2D game. Of course, someone may say things like, oh, but X, Y, C games are really well crafted with 3D worlds. Yeah, I definitely agree, but most of the times these games are produced with low budget or not enough passion or trying to effectively imitate a wizardry title. So if you're waiting for a game with lots of cutscenes, great visuals, stunning voice acting, then you may be looking at the wrong genre. Beware that I am not criticizing the music. Here some may not be so good, but others really exceed and have outstanding OSTs. In the fourth pro, I will say, there is a game for everyone. While it is true that DRPGs have grown stagnant within, let's say, big or short companies, the fact is that within the indie realm, there's a lot of DRPGs being produced, and even if we want to take those out of the equation, this is where combinations between genres may apply. Want a game with choices and multiple paths, but also action? There is Skyrim. Wanna play a new wizardry but not an insanely long one? Go for Labyrinth of Sangetsu. Want to jump into sci-fi? Start Crawlers. A new look in the formula with some action elements? Legend of Grimrock 2. An action and responsive game with the old look? Orcs and Elves. Wanna play a dumb setting with 7 dwarves? Legends of Amberland. Or if you are in for the waifus, Chronicle or Crystal. The fact is that there is almost a game for everyone out there, going from action games to the most classic approaches. In the fifth con, something that cannot be denied. They are slow as heck. Most DRPGs are slow in nature. I mean, if you wanna play a fast DRPG, this may not be your day. Most likely there's one out there, but the truth is that these games are on the slow side, even action ones. Wonder how all the RPGs were played? As I said before, you needed pen and paper, count the steps really well and not get distracted. Otherwise, getting lost inside one of these places was pretty much looking at your whole party die. You can say, okay, that is in the past, even with auto-mapping mechanics. The fact is that oftentimes they throw traps here and there, which makes the movement rather slow, as you need to double check, because you don't want to fall and die. Labyrinth of Refrain reminded me that a lot, and when I edit my videos I see that oftentimes I'm actually moving the camera down to check for traps. And in case the game doesn't support that mechanic, it is just moving and see what happens, unless the game gives you a spell or item to look around. And for the last pro, they are crunchy games. This one may see it on the negative side for a lot of people, but oftentimes if there is something this subgenre does stupidly well, is throwing lots of items to customize your characters, as they usually carry on that idea. You can specialize your character not just in class but equipment too, and if that doesn't sound that appealing, I will also say don't worry. The fact is that there are many DRPGs that don't precisely force you to do that, but in a small farming sessions. Here I don't wanna throw the old school approach because you will fight a lot of Morphs and get tired, but in many new releases, and with that I mean like 2010 to this day, I have found many that don't take that much time, but they keep an entertaining farming session. And that's it. What else would you consider a good reason to play one of these games, or to stay as far away as possible? I hope you found this video informative. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.